Ashdown Forest is known to most as the setting for Winnie the Pooh. To me, it was my office. I've been a park ranger here for 10 years, and I know its secrets better than most. The serene woods hide a dark history. In the 1980s, a serial killer hunted here, leaving his victims scattered across the landscape. The locals all know the stories, but I'm a pragmatist. I don't believe in ghosts. About a month ago, a hiker reported a child's voice calling for help in a remote, dense patch of the woods. We launched a search, but found nothing. A few weeks later, another hiker reported the same thing. Concerned, I went out myself to check the area. I was walking through a particular thick patch of trees when I heard it. A faint, reedy voice carried on the wind. "Mummy!" it cried. "Please help me!" It was the most heartbreaking sound I had ever heard. I followed the voice, pushing through the thick undergrowth and gnarled branches until I came to an old, abandoned cottage. The voice was coming from inside. I took out my flashlight and slowly pushed the door open. The cottage was empty, but the voice was coming from an old, rusted well in the middle of the room. I looked into the well, and I saw a child's face staring back at me. Her eyes were wide with terror, her face pale and distorted by the water. She just stared at me, pleading, and a cold dread washed over me. I screamed and scrambled back, my heart pounding in my chest, and the child's face was gone. I called for backup, and we searched the entire area, but we found nothing. No body, no evidence of a child, nothing. I told myself it was a hallucination, a product of my overactive imagination. But it wasn't over. The next day, I was sitting in my office when I got a call from a woman. She was a psychic, and she told me she had a message for me from a little girl who was trapped in the woods. "She told me she's not a ghost," the woman said. "She's not a spirit, she's a memory." That's when I realized the horrifying truth. The killer didn't just kill his victims, he trapped their memories in the woods, replaying their final moments over and over again. And the voice I heard wasn't a ghost, it was a memory of the girl's last moments, screaming for her mother, trapped in the well, reliving her death for eternity. And the most chilling part, the woman on the phone had a faint, reedy voice, and I could hear her faintly calling, "Help me," just before she hung up. The killer didn't just create ghosts, he turned them into memories, forever trapped in the woods. And now I knew what I was hearing was the last words of a terrified child, replaying for all of eternity. My name is James, and I'm a mycologist, a botanist who specialises in fungi. Most people think it's a boring field, but fungi are great recyclers of the forest, the secret architects of decay. A few months ago, I was granted a research permit for a deeply isolated section of the New Forest. I was there to study a rare species of fungi, a bioluminescent mushroom with unique, rumoured properties. The forest is ancient, a wild, beautiful place with gnarled 1,000-year-old oaks and beeches, their branches twisted into strange, unsettling shapes. I was in my element. I found the fungi, a cluster of sickly pale mushrooms glowing with a faint blue light, growing on the trunk of a massive, fallen oak. I set up my field camera and equipment, excited to finally get to work. I was working late one night, lost in the quiet concentration of my research, when I started to hear it, a low, mournful crying sound. It wasn't the wind, it was the sound of 1,000 people sobbing, a heartbroken, desperate wail that seemed to come from the very trees themselves. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, a cold dread washing over me. I tried to rationalize it, a peculiar wind through the old trees, an echo, but the sound was too human, too full of pain. I took out my phone and I tried to record it. On the screen, the audio wave was flat. The recording was just silence. but I could still hear the crying, clearer now, as if a chorus of 1,000 voices were screaming in my mind. I packed up my gear, ran back to my car, and drove away terrified. The next day, I went back. The crying was gone, but the forest felt wrong. The trees were withered and grey, as if they had aged 100 years in a single night. The ground was littered with freshly fallen skeletal leaves. I went to my research site and examined the fungi, and I made a bizarre discovery. The mushrooms were not feeding on the dead wood of the tree. They were feeding on its memories. The mycelium, the root system of the fungus, had spread into the trunk, absorbing the tree's centuries of history, its memories of the people who have walked, lived, and died in the forest. The crying I heard was the trees releasing the memories of the people who have been hanged, murdered, and buried in the forest over the centuries. I had an appointment with a historical botanist to discuss my findings. When I arrived, his office door was ajar. The smell was acrid and sweet, like rotting leaves and damp earth. I walked in, and I saw him. He was dead, his face frozen in a look of absolute terror. He was clutching a handful of the same mushrooms I had been studying. The police report said he died from a heart attack, but I know what happened. He saw the crying, he saw the memories, and the fungi had absorbed his memory of me. Now, I can't shake the feeling that the trees are crying, and they're calling my name. And I have this bizarre feeling that my own memories are slipping away, one by one. I can't remember my wife's face. I can't remember my own address. I'm afraid that soon there'll be nothing left of me but a whisper on the wind. I've always loved Epping Forest. It's a beautiful, sprawling wilderness, a relic of ancient England just on the edge of modern London. Grown up, we'd always go there to escape the city's madness. Everyone knows the local legends, the highwaymen, the murders, the ghost stories. We all thought they were just that, stories. Last autumn, a friend of mine, Liam, and I decided to go for a night hike. We'd done it before. We had a map, a compass, and we knew the area pretty well. But Epping Forest is a living labyrinth. About 3 miles in, just as the last of the twilight faded, we got completely turned around. The trees all looked the same, and the path we were following just seemed to vanish into the dense undergrowth. As we fumbled with the map, we heard a twig snap. We both froze, our headlamps cutting through the darkness. About 50 yards away, standing in a small clearing, was a figure. It was a man, dressed in old, tattered clothes, just standing there, completely still, staring at us. He was unnaturally tall and thin, his body a long, gaunt shadow in the gloom. Liam, thinking he was just another lost hiker, called out to him, "Are you alright, mate? We're a bit turned around. Can you point us to the right trail?" The man didn't respond. He just stood there, unmoving, staring. We started walking towards him, slowly, cautiously, but the closer we got, the more distorted he looked. His head was cocked at a strange, unnatural angle, and his body was so long it seemed to stretch into the trees themselves. A cold dread settled in the pit of my stomach. We stopped dead in our tracks. Then, slowly, deliberately, the man raised his arm. He had a long, gnarled finger, and he pointed it directly at the branch of a massive, gnarled oak tree next to him. We both looked at the branch, a thick, ancient limb that jutted out over the clearing. When we looked back at the man, he was gone, vanished. We didn't say a word, we just turned and ran. We ran blindly through the woods, scraping ourselves on thorns and stumbling over roots, until we finally hit a main road. We were both shaken to the core, but a few hours later, after a long drive home, we started to rationalize it. A hallucination? A prank? It was a dark, isolated place and our minds had just played a trick on us. A few weeks later, my curiosity got the better of me. I was researching Epping Forest and found a small note on an old historical map that read, Hanged Man's Oak. I searched for it online and found a local history blog. The legend said that a highwayman named Dick Turpin was hanged from that very tree in the 1700s, and his ghost still haunts the area, luring travellers to his death. But the real horror wasn't the legend. The blog went on to say that the Hangman's Oak was a major landmark, but it had been cut down more than 100 years ago. And yet, we both saw it. We both saw the gnarled tree, the long, thick branch, and the silent man standing beneath it, pointing. We saw a landmark that had been gone for a century, and in that moment, I realised the horrifying truth. The ghost wasn't luring us to our death, he was warning us away from it. A silent sentinel trying to keep us away from the place where his memory still hangs. He wanted us to run. We did. But I can't shake the image of his unnaturally long body and the unsettling angle of his head, forever suspended from a tree that no longer exists. My name is Mark, and I'm a seasoned trail runner. I know Cannock Chase like the back of my hand. The place is famous for its eerie legend, the black-eyed child, the sightings of werewolves, but I always wrote them off as local folklore. To me, they were just stories to scare tourists and give a bit of thrill to a quiet Sunday run. A few months ago, my friend Mike and I were running a trail we've done 100 times. We were in a deep, secluded part of the woods when Mike's headlamp flickered and died. We fumbled with a spare, our only light a weak beam from my phone. The woods felt different in the dark, bigger, more ancient. That's when we heard it, a woman's voice, soft and shaky, whispering from the woods. "I'm lost," she said. We looked at each other and shrugged. It was a common occurrence in a place this big. We called out, "We can help you. Where are you?" The voice whispered, "I'm here." We followed the voice, pushing through thick undergrowth and gnarled branches until we came to a small, abandoned shack. The voice was coming from inside. The air was thick and cold, and a profound sense of dread just washed over us. We opened the door, and the shack was empty. The voice then said, "I'm not lost anymore." We ran out to the shack, our hearts pounding, and we ran until we hit a main road. We both thought it was a prank and we just laughed it off. A few weeks later, my curiosity got the better of me. I was looking at old newspaper clippings from Cannock Chase. I found a story about a woman named Sarah who had gone missing in the very same woods a few years ago. She was a runner, just like us. She was never found though. Her last words, according to her family, were, "I'm lost." A shiver ran down my spine. The ghost wasn't a lost soul. She was a murderer. She was luring people into the woods with her last words, and she was adding them to her collection. I went back to the location of the shack, and I saw something I hadn't noticed before. A small, makeshift grave with a single, uncarved stone. It was a recent grave. I didn't get close to it. I just ran out of the woods and never went back. But every night, I hear a faint whisper from the woods. "I'm not lost anymore." And I know she's not. She's found a new home in the woods, and she's waiting for her next victim.